Good morning. I sit usually over there, and I just kind of hum along through the service, but boy, it's taken a long time to get to the message part of the service this Sunday. It is good to be with you, and I will work at managing my body today and its anxiety. As we started this series on wellness, I didn't realize that I would have to put some of my own personal work into this in a different way. So you will hear the fruits of my work these past few weeks. We join the gospel lesson this morning as Jesus is actively in ministry with people, seeking to work in the everyday to find ways to transform the mundane and the ordinary into something extraordinary. And so a simple visit, a simple meal is transformed into something much different. So let us join the story and find ways for the story to connect to our story, that we may transform the ordinary into the extraordinary in our own daily walk with the one who calls us, who created us, and who sustains us. Now, as they went on their way, Jesus entered a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed Jesus into her home. She had a sister named Mary who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to what he was saying. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks. So she came to him and asked, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her then to help me." But the Lord answered her, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. There is need of only one thing, and Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her." Let us pray. Guide us, O God, in our work and in our play. Guide us as we hear this story and find ways to connect it to our own story. Clear the clutter, clear the chaos, clear our eyes that we may see the things that really matter, to be at peace and simply be. Amen. Our summer focus on wellness or holistic health begins an intimate dialogue with the connections, the interconnections as well as the outer connections of the spirit, body, and mind. In the month of July, we are looking at the body, but we cannot just simply look at the body as a standalone. We have to look at it in connection with the mind and the spirit. And so we take something that is simple and ordinary and begin to change it into something much deeper, relevant, and meaningful for our daily journey. So our efforts today to bike to church, or to practice yoga twice a week, or to join the Sunday morning walking group, or the monthly running group, or to really deep dive into the wellness notebook that we've provided for you. It's not merely if I can do all these things and attend all these things, it is to see the connection with the mind, body, and spirit. So for me, running is much more than clocking miles. It is a chance for me to be alone, to clear my head, to push my body, to feel each step, and to feel each ache and pain. Each movement builds and strengthens that connection when we're able to transform from a to-do list and a task list to seeing the way that we are created intricately and uniquely. But that requires that we begin to look at the expectations and find a balance as we do the important work of listening. let's be frank and honest. When we talk about the body comes with expectations. We want our bodies to do things, and we are very disappointed and upset when they don't do what we want them to do or look like we think that they should. Not many of us have the walk of Naomi Campbell on a Parisian runway during Fashion Week. Not many of our bodies look like Greg Louganis on a diving platform. Not many of us can move our bodies the way Bruno Mars does and Gloria Estefan does to the beat of the music. And with those expectations that we are gifted and given, we often think that our bodies fall short. But our work is then stopped by somewhat unrealistic expectations of what the body should do or what the body should look like, instead of looking and listening and finding ways to develop realistic expectations for the self, not based on any other input from a magazine or an ad or an advertisement or someone else. Together we can find ways to look at ourselves and to find ways to be transformed through the body, mind, and spirit. And so that's where it is helpful to look at the story of Mary and Martha. When Martha heard Jesus was coming to town, she invited him for dinner. She desired to open up her home. But when Martha extended the invitation, she also extended the invitation to any who were traveling with Jesus, and Jesus usually didn't travel alone. So that created a little more work than just Jesus and her sister Mary for a small, intimate dinner. Martha had her to-do list, and she set out to the market. She visited with her neighbor, "Do you have anything to add to what we can feed Jesus and the crowd?" And when she arrived home, her arms full, her feet tired, there was Mary doing absolutely nothing. She'll come around. I know she will. I have confidence in my sister. I'm here now. And Martha started clanging and banging and sweeping. She had that incessant throat clear. Mary, I need some help over here. Martha's body was rigid and tense, her blood pressure to the sky. Can't you see, Mary? I have so much work to do, and it is your duty, your responsibility to help me. Her banging, her clanging, the dust from her sweeping, it had not gotten the attention of Jesus or Mary, and so she confronted not Mary, but Jesus. Jesus, you need to tell Mary what she needs to be doing, and that's helping me get ready for you. Martha's body. Can you feel Martha's body? Tired from the anger that is brewing inside of her. Exhausted from trying to stir and to knead and to sweep. The body, it doesn't lie. And as a woman, there was an expectation for what her hands and her feet needed to be doing. They needed to cook, create, and clean. A duty for the body. Now let's look at Mary. Mary's body was in a much different place. Her body was relaxed and engaged. It was attentive and open. Her body was leaning in, listening, and ignoring and tuning out the clatter and the banging. And while Mary is very silent in this story, she says so much. She doesn't respond to the anxiety of her sister. She listens. She listens for that still small voice that is coming alive within her to go against the duty that is assigned to her. And in Jesus' time, women had a duty to perform. And Mary went against that duty, and Jesus broke with that tradition in order to together create a new model for what the message of God is all about for all people. And while they broke down those gender roles in this small story that we find tucked into the Gospel of Luke, Mary sat and listened, her body attentive and attuned to each and every word that Jesus spoke. The text that we are gifted with today helps us to build that intimate connection with the mind, body, and spirit. Martha's body, rigid and responding to all that she needs to do with pots banging and an army to feed. And Mary, sitting and listening, being fed and nourished and strengthened by the Spirit of God that dwelled within the stories of Jesus about wayward sons and a loving Father, about ways to pray on earth as it is in heaven, about how to feed a multitude of people when we seemingly have little to give and share. The interconnection is certainly at work, and Jesus is in tune with Mary and Martha and gives them the gift of helping them to see the importance of listening, to help us look at the expectations of what we're supposed to do and we should do, and instead gives way to a balancing act that helps to center the mind, body, and spirit, which is a vital connection in times of troubled waters. We see Mary and Martha, and can we see our own lives within those stories? Can we begin to have a dialogue about the body in comparison to ourself, not always in comparison to the other? Martha had an expectation for what Mary needed to be doing with her hands, her feet, and her body, and that rhythm needed to be working right alongside of her. Mary saw the invitation in a much different way. She knew that she needed to sit and be present to God who was in her midst, and to draw close, tuning out the chaos and the noise and the expectation. But body expectation is not just a Mary and Martha problem. Our bodies are not designed and created to be machines, to produce products, but instead our bodies are to be used to create and to share. For our body is beautiful, and our body is beautiful in motion, and our body is fueled at times by deep passion as well as deep anger. But our bodies are often compared. They should be doing this. They should look in this way. And those body expectations inhibit us from growing into what we can be and become. My closet is lined with several sizes of khaki pants. And I begin to notice a shift when I go up instead of down. When I start going up, I know that I am stressed. I'm stressed because I'm eating more. I'm not hungry. My body doesn't require more. Instead, my lifelong adult battle with weight, it keeps me from moving forward in managing what my body is trying to tell me. When I'm stressed, I skip the gym and decide that a bagel would be more important than a fruit cup. And at night, when I'm kicking around, watching some TV, there's always a need for a bowl of ice cream. Or two. My body is telling me there's an unfulfilled need. And food, while important to fuel the body, is not what is needed in these times and spaces. Can the reach for ice cream be replaced with a reach for prayer? Can the reach for that bagel or two be soothed through a mantra or an indwelling of peace? If we begin to peel away the expectations, can we find ourselves in the midst of what is there, what is being stated and said, instead of merely just going up another size for another day? Our expectations are often easily solved with stepping back, as Mary did, to listen to what is important and to what is being said and what is ultimately needed. Can we embrace what is needed instead of what we are being fed? That was very true for me in a very relevant way early in my ministry when I was officiating at a funeral. Family sat with me as we were planning and preparing, and the grandson, who was relatively quiet throughout the preparation, said, "I want to say a few words." His father looked at me and said, "Don't let him. He can't do it." Young, inexperienced, I said, "I think that'd be great." And as that moment came for him to speak, his body gave way to what was going on inside of him. He trembled, he shifted, he cried, he wept. His father was angry. And he said to me afterwards, "You see, I told you that wouldn't work out." I tried to reassure the father that it did work out, for we were able to see the impact that the grandfather had upon a life well lived. And that touch is sometimes stirred within us emotions that somehow, in some times and places, are described by what we are expected to do instead of what we are ultimately experiencing. Can we make way for new expectations? Can we shed our old expectations? A new way for people to express what is stirring, not limited to the way in which their bodies or their genders are assigned. And in this way, we can be fully human and grow into what Jesus is inviting us to become each and every day, a human being, not a human doing. And in this way, we make way for new expectations for our bodies that, when working together, can not just keep our heart and our brain and our blood on the inside, but they can help us to display our emotions, our calling, our fears, and our dreams. There is a need to find the balance, and that is what Jesus was encouraging of Mary and Martha. We need to find that balance that includes our body, mind, and soul, as together we find ways to thrive together in this kingdom here on earth. As Martha worked, as Mary listened, can we see what is before us as opportunity, not an ending? When I am anxious, which is often, I know that I'm in trouble when my fingertips get really cold. So I observe this, and if I just let it go, my anxiety increases. My fingertips are cold. What do I need to do? I need to do something. Do something quick, Tim. Think about something. You need to say something. You need to do something. That just speeds up the process. Now the blood is circulating right around my heart and flowing to my brain. Do something. Get into the fix-it mode. But what I discovered many years ago was that in order to combat that cold fingertips, it was to get in touch with it, to lean into it. And so I start by just sitting down and breathing, which seems normal and every day, but for me is next to impossible. And when I can do that, my fingertips they begin to feel again, and they're not cold. And I begin to see that interconnectedness of my body is trying to tell me something. Am I willing to listen? Am I willing to connect? Am I willing to solve the problem in a much different way? It was not my idea to tell you that I have a weight problem, that I'm anxious, and that I see things that are important and sometimes open my mouth and things come out. I share these things with you to say that this mind-body-spirit connection is vitally important to our faith, to my faith. God created us in a wonderful and beautiful way, and our outside and our inside come together to help find a balance as we find ways to be in tune and to listen to the creative work of God within us. If we're looking to just perfect things, the perfect prayer, a calm presence, a beautiful body, we miss the wonderful opportunity that is before us to see how these vital connections come together to create a life-giving well of hope and of love. And when we do that, we become contagious in our work to share that with others. And when that is shared with others, that is in turn shared with more. And in turn, our simple work of listening, of managing expectations, and finding a balance creates the kingdom of God here on earth as it is in heaven. Thanks be to God. Amen. Thank you for joining in worship today. Please continue a time together for Lemonade on the Lawn, which is right outside here. We can continue the spirit of fellowship together. We have been called to this place in this time, but now we are called to go into the world, to share the connection, mind, body, spirit, with ourselves and with others. Let us go in peace and practice what we have challenged ourselves to learn and to grow into on this day and in all our days to come. Amen.